Join the Thinking in English Conversation Club right now and get a 7-day free trial. That's right, 1 week free to see if you enjoy our conversation club. The only way to improve your English speaking ability is by speaking, and speaking as often as possible. And the best way to do this is with my conversation clubs. Join small groups of other Thinking in English listeners, along with me and professional English tutors, to discuss fascinating topics, learn vocabulary, and really improve your English. All of our clubs are conducted online and are an amazing space to practice, test yourself, and meet interesting people. We run clubs 6 times a week, and the more of you who join, the more sessions we will run in the future. You can join the Conversation Club right now for just $10 a month. And if you sign up today, you can get a 7-day free trial. Click the link in the description or go to www.patreon.com/thinkinginenglish to join now. Hello, I'm Tom Wilkinson and welcome to the Thinking in English podcast, a podcast for intermediate to advanced level English learners. Recently, I've seen a lot of people online talking about the 10,000 hour rule. Today, I'm going to look at this rule, the evidence for and against 10,000 hours, and discuss how all of you listening can apply the 10,000 hour rule to learning English. You can find the full transcript of today's episode for free over on the Thinking in English blog. The link is in the description. Leave a like or rating wherever you are listening. 5 stars would be much appreciated. And support the podcast on Patreon and by joining my conversation clubs. Click the link in the description. Here is today's vocabulary list. Mastery. Mastery. Achieving a high level of skill or expertise in a particular field. For example, after years of dedicated practice and study, she achieved mastery in playing the piano. Deliberate practice. Deliberate practice. Focused and intentional effort to improve specific aspects of a skill. For example, the tennis player engaged in deliberate practice by focusing on improving her backhand technique for hours every day. Comfort zone. Comfort zone. The level of difficulty or familiarity within which a person feels at ease. As in, he was hesitant to take on new challenges because he preferred to stay within his comfort zone. Second nature. Second nature. Something that has become so natural and instinctive that it feels effortless. For instance, after years of experience, driving a car became second nature to him. To propel. To propel. To drive or push forward, cause progress or advancement. For instance, the success of their innovative product propelled the company to the forefront of the industry. Sustained effort. Sustained effort. Consistent and continuous application of energy or resources, as in, the athlete's consistent and sustained effort in training allowed him to reach the top of his sport. Multifaceted. Multifaceted. Having many different aspects or elements, as in, the job requires a multifaceted skill set, including problem-solving, communication, and leadership abilities. Knack. Knack. A natural skill or talent for doing something. For example, she has a knack for solving puzzles. The 10,000 hour rule was popularized by Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers. It suggests that achieving mastery in any field requires approximately 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. So, what exactly does this mean? In the simplest of explanations, spending 10,000 hours practicing a skill, like English speaking, oil painting, playing the guitar, or boxing, is necessary to become a master at that skill. So 10,000 hours of practice equals master. The idea is that rather than natural talent being the most important thing, it is the hours spent practicing skills that are important. The more you practice, dedicate yourself to learning, and focus on improving, the more likely it is that you will become elite in your chosen skill. The 10,000 hour rule suggests that hard work and practice are the reason why elite athletes, world-class musicians, and fluent English speakers are so successful. The 10,000 hour rule is based on the idea of deliberate practice, which goes beyond just mindless repetition. Rather than simply doing something for 10,000 hours, you need to be actively and deliberately practicing. Deliberate practice involves focused efforts to improve a specific skill or aspects of a skill and pushing yourself beyond the comfort zone. In other words, it's not just how much you practice, but also how you practice that makes the difference. As an English learner, for example, it doesn't just mean after 10,000 hours of using English you will be fluent. It depends on how you spend those 10,000 hours. Deliberately practicing in classes, language exchanges, or with textbooks, or just watching Netflix. The outcome will be different. The origin of the 10,000 hour rule can be traced back to the research of Anders Ericsson, a prominent psychologist. Ericsson conducted a study on violinists and found that the most accomplished musicians had accumulated an average of 10,000 hours of practice by the age of 20. This research became the foundation for the 10,000 hour rule. The rule suggests that it takes a considerable amount of deliberate practice to reach a level of expertise where skills become second nature. It emphasizes the importance of consistent and intentional effort in skill acquisition. Let's take a few examples of successful individuals. The legendary musician Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. He began composing music at a very young age and dedicated countless hours to refining his craft. Similarly, athletes like Serena Williams and Lionel Messi have spent years practicing and honing their skills to become the best in their respective sports. While the 10,000 hour rule is not a guarantee of success in every endeavor, it highlights the significance of hard work, focused practice, and dedication. It suggests that expertise is not just determined by natural talent, but can be cultivated through deliberate and consistent effort. So, is this actually the case? What evidence is there in support of the 10,000 hour rule? As I mentioned earlier, one of the foundational studies supporting the 10,000 hour rule is the research conducted by Anders Ericsson on violinists. Ericsson and his colleagues found that the most accomplished violinists had accumulated thousands of hours of deliberate practice, far surpassing their less accomplished counterparts. This study, according to the authors, demonstrated the connection between deliberate practice and expertise. Building on those findings, the researchers concluded that practice was the most effective thing to improve your skills. The more you practice, the better you will be at whatever you are practicing. Natural talent in this line of thinking was not that important. They even went as far to suggest that the differences in ability between musicians was almost exclusively down to the amount they practiced. This is the idea that well-known author Malcolm Gladwell borrowed for his book called Outliers. He took the nice-sounding round number of 10,000 hours and wrote that 10,000 hours is the magic number of greatness. Since the first study by Ericsson in 1993, There have been other studies that have been conducted and give some support to the idea of deliberate practice. A study on chess players, for example, found that at least 3,000 hours of deliberate practice was usually necessary to become a master at the skill of chess. Chess grandmasters usually need thousands of hours of practice and study before reaching the pinnacle of their game. However, unlike the earlier study by Ericsson, these authors found that while practice was necessary, it was not the only factor influencing someone's success. And in 2011, Mathai Saeed wrote about sport in his book Bounce. He suggested that 10,000 hours of meaningful practice was needed to become an expert athlete. Language learning is another area where the idea of deliberate practice can be applied. I did a quick search of Google Scholar and found a lot of research conducted in this field. One study found that deliberate practice improved vocabulary acquisition, and many others suggested that to become a proficient English speaker, many hours of practice was necessary. Deliberate practice involves identifying specific weaknesses or areas for improvement, and then designing your practice sessions to target those areas. It also emphasizes the need for regular feedback, guidance, and reflection. By focusing on challenging aspects of the skill and receiving feedback to refine your own performance, learners in any skill can make more efficient progress. Consistency is another crucial aspect of the 10,000 hour rule. Regular and consistent practice over an extended period, maybe even years, allows learners to build upon their previous knowledge and skills, leading to gradual improvement and ultimately mastery. It is the cumulative or added up effect of sustained effort that propels individuals towards expertise. All of that sounds quite convincing, right? 10,000 hours, or a lot of hours in any case, of deliberate practice is the key to mastering a skill. This makes sense. But there is a slight problem with the 10,000 hour rule. Most modern research done by scientists disagrees with its central idea. Lots of practice and practice alone will make you a master. Right? That's the idea of the 10,000 hour rule. Natural talent and other factors aren't that important. It is practice that's the most important thing. The chess study I mentioned earlier summed up the criticism of this idea in its conclusion. Deliberate practice is necessary but not sufficient. In other words, you need to deliberately practice a lot to be great at something. Of course, you need to practice a lot. But it's not the only thing. It's not the only factor affecting your skill. They pointed out that if you look at chess masters, the amount practiced before reaching the master level varied between 728 hours and 16,120 hours. That's a big difference. A few years ago, a group of researchers tried to reproduce the study conducted by Ericsson in 1993. That was the base for the 10,000 hour rule. And they were much more scientific. They used more violinists in their study than Ericsson did. They used tighter controls, and they pre-registered their approach, meaning they confirmed their plans and analysis before starting the research. What did they find? Well, of course they found practice was important, but it's not as important as the 10,000 hour rule would have you believed. And it's not actually that useful to predict elite or masters at a skill. They looked at 3 different groups: highly skilled elite violinists, good violinists, and less accomplished violinists. Less accomplished violinists had only accumulated around 6,000 hours of practice by the age of 20, while the better violinists had averages of around 11,000 hours. And that does support the 10,000 hour rule. People who practiced for 10,000 hours were better than people who practiced for 6,000 hours. But here is something slightly more confusing. the good violinists actually practiced more than the highly skilled elite violinists, right? The best violinists practice less than the good ones. Even though they reported practicing more often, the good violinists were not as good as their more elite counterparts. The study concluded that the amount of practice you do is about 25% of the reason for differences in skill. But this is only half suggested by Erickson in the previous study. The author, McNamara, said, once you get to the highly skilled groups, practice stops accounting for the difference. Everyone has practiced a lot, and other factors are at play in determining who goes on to that super elite level. The factors depend on the skill being learned. In chess, it could be intelligence or working memory. In sport, it may be how efficiently a person uses oxygen. To complicate matters further, one factor can drive another. A child who enjoys playing the violin, for example, may be happy to practice and be focused on the task because they do not see it as a chore. And this is similar to what many other studies have found. In a summary of 88 different research papers, one group of researchers found that while deliberate practice is important, it is not the only reason people are good at things. People who practice more tend to be better at a skill than people who practice less, but it's not a guarantee that you will become an expert. The 10,000 hour rule is too simplistic, therefore. Just practicing for 10,000 hours, even if you practice deliberately, is not necessarily going to make you a fluent English speaker. Factors such as natural talent, access to resources, and the quality of practice can greatly impact skill acquisition. For English learners, the age you started learning, how you study and practice, the quality of your teachers and the textbooks you use, and even your natural ability to learn languages, all of that matters. Some individuals may require more or less time than the average 10,000 hours to reach mastery. I've talked before about how you need to consider yourself in control of your English learning journey in order to stay motivated. Worrying about things like your natural ability is not going to help you study. But it is important to realize that natural talent is a real thing. Some people are quicker at learning languages, have better memories, or better natural ability at pronunciation. This doesn't mean that people without that talent will never become a fluent English speaker. Of course not. All of you listening can become fluent English speakers. But it might mean it will take some people longer. Or it might mean that you will have an accent for longer. In the study of violinists from a few years ago, they found that practice is important to understand the difference between less accomplished violinists and good violinists, but not as much between good violinists and great violinists. So practice will make you good, but it might not make you great. Now, let's see how we can apply the idea of deliberate practice and the arguments about the 10,000 hour rule to learning English. Learning a language is a complex skill that requires time, effort, and consistent practice. Although the 10,000 hour rule may not give us a clear roadmap for becoming fluent in English, it does provide valuable insights into the learning process. As we discussed earlier, deliberate practice involves identifying a specific weakness or area for improvement, and then designing your practice sessions, your study sessions, to target that area. In language learning, this means focusing on improving vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, listening comprehension, speaking, reading, or writing skills. By breaking down these components and dedicating focused sessions to practicing each of them, you can work towards improving your overall proficiency. Activities such as language exchanges, language classes, using authentic resources like books and articles, or using language learning apps can all be considered forms of deliberate practice. These activities provide opportunities for you to actively engage with the language, receive feedback, and reflect on your progress. Additionally, setting specific goals, tracking progress, and seeking guidance from teachers or language experts can enhance the effectiveness of deliberate practice. Consistency is another important aspect of language learning, which aligns with the 10,000-hour rule. Regular and consistent practice over years, months, weeks, years allows you to reinforce your knowledge and skills, gradually improving your proficiency. Each practice session contributes to building a strong foundation. It's worth noting that language learning involves various factors beyond just the number of hours practicing. Natural talent, access to resources, learning strategies, and your individual learning style can all impact the speed and effectiveness of language acquisition. Some individuals may have a natural knack for learning languages, while others may require more time, effort to achieve a similar level of proficiency. Furthermore, the quality of practice is crucial in language learning. Just consuming language content without actively engaging or reflecting on the learning process may not produce the desired results. You should strive for meaningful and purposeful practice that challenges you and pushes you out of your comfort zone. While the 10,000-hour rule offers a useful framework for understanding the importance of deliberate practice and consistent effort in language learning, it is not a rigid formula that guarantees fluency. Language learning is dynamic and multifaceted. It's influenced by various different factors. Embracing a growth mindset, setting realistic goals, and adopting effective learning strategies can contribute to successful language acquisition. So here is today's final thought. The ideas of deliberate practice and the 10,000-hour rule offer valuable insights for English learners. While practice is important, it is not the only factor that determines success in language learning. Natural talent, access to resources, and effective learning strategies can also influence your progress. As you pursue English fluency, stay motivated, practice consistently, and try to adopt a growth mindset. Believe in your ability to succeed, set achievable goals, and remember that with dedication and perseverance, you can make a lot of progress in your English language journey. But what do you think? Do you believe in the 10,000-hour rule? Or do you think it is too simplistic? Let me know by leaving a comment on Spotify, a comment on the Thinking in English blog, on the transcript for this episode, or reach out on Instagram and send me a message. While you're over on Instagram, follow my account. We're now posting with every episode vocabulary graphics on Instagram as well, so you can check out the vocabulary over on Instagram. Also follow me on YouTube. All the episodes are going to eventually be uploaded to YouTube. We're doing 3 or 4 a week at the moment. Leave a rating, 5-star rating wherever you are listening. If you love listening to Thinking in English and you want to support me and support the podcast, please do. Please subscribe to Patreon. Please join our conversation clubs, an excellent way for you to practice English. Join our study groups and lots of other things. So go and join Patreon. There's some big announcements coming for Patreon as well. So make sure you're subscribed to Patreon right now so that you'll be able to use my new announcement as soon as possible. But thank you guys for listening today. I hope you have a great day, a great week, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.